Welcome to another episode of Uplifting Conversations. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of being with Marlon Evans of Nex Cubed, also the HBCU Founders Initiative, and now HBCU Founders Fund. Marlon, thank you so much for joining me here today.
The word that I keep coming back to is uplifting. I have this conviction based on my lived experience that uplifting people or the planet doesn't have to be draining. It can actually feel uplifting to the person who's making that impact.
Today, I have the absolute pleasure of being with Marlon Evans of Nex Cubed, also the HBCU Founders Initiative, and now HBCU Founders Fund. Marlon, thank you so much for joining me here today.
No, absolutely, Toussaint. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I think I would probably rather have you describe what an accelerator as a service is in terms of what Nex Cubed does. And then why don't you share a little bit about how that led you into the HBCU Founders Initiative, what that is, and then now the most recent sort of step in that progression, which is the HBCU Founders Fund.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've been investing in early stage companies since 2017, and our model is we provide a cash investment and then a 4-month accelerator program for primarily pre-seed, seed stage companies. And so we've made 80 investments over that period, and our capital comes from primarily high net worth individuals, family offices who invest directly into Nex Cubed, and then we kind of leverage that capital to make investments into our portfolio. And when there's a liquidity event in the portfolio, we bring that money back into Nex Cubed and kind of distribute it out pro rata to our shareholders. But a unique thing about our model is we've built up this infrastructure to run these accelerator programs. So other foundations and other corporates will come to us and ask us to run an accelerator on their behalf, and they'll kind of pay us to run those programs for them. So the company is both generating revenue on one hand, but then also distributing capital on the other. And so that foundation kind of led us to wanting to see if we couldn't open source our accelerator curriculum to support individuals who typically don't have access to the resources at that really early stage level to help them scale and grow their businesses. And so we rolled it out to HBCUs, starting initially with students and recent alums, and found that we were filling a really great void in the marketplace. There was a lot of really great point in time activity happening at HBCUs, whether those are corporate sponsored pitch competitions or hackathons, but there wasn't kind of that ongoing programming to say, okay, now you have this great idea, what do you do with it? And so our program really helped kind of fill that void, and it just really snowballed from there to the point where we spun it out as its own 501c3, and we launched a fund as well.
Yeah, no, I would love for you to go a little bit deeper about how you got from what Nex Cubed was initially doing and still is doing to starting the HBCU Founders Initiative, because I know you're Stanford grad, educated at one of the best institutions in the country, but not at a historically Black university or college. You have a daughter who's superstar at Stanford. You have another one in the Ivy League. What was it that caused you to look at HBCUs and go, I want to make an impact at historically Black colleges and universities?
Yeah, no, I mean, great question. I mean, from our kind of perspective, we're always looking for opportunities to create an impact. And the reality is, if we decided, hey, we want to run accelerator programs at Stanford or UPenn or MIT, like we would be one of 10 different programs. So there's not a lack of access or resource there. So we decided, where can we go where we feel like we can create the greatest impact? and in looking at HBCUs and what they were offering, the tremendous amount of talent that was there, we just felt like it was, just unfair that there was that amount of talent, great ideas, and a lot of that was just dying on the vine just due to lack of support. And so we said, hey, we have the resources. Let's try to, to whatever level we can, fill that void.
How have you found the translation to be from doing this places like GE and other kind of big going concerns that probably have all sorts of sophistication and ecosystem around building up companies, to taking this and putting it somewhere that maybe doesn't have that same ecosystem and DNA?
Yeah, no, it's a great reminder that things that we take for granted is not always the case. Not everybody has access to that funding that they need, to people who have kind of been there, done that. We're both here in the Bay Area. If I walk outside and throw a baseball, I'll probably hit one VC, a startup founder. It's just a part of the ecosystem. So we just had to recognize, look, we're not starting from scratch, but we need to take steps to ensure that the right mentors and advisors are available to the students, that there is some early stage capital, that there's a curriculum, there's content. So making sure that we're bringing essentially the full accelerator as a package to the institution. And then ideally, after we've been on campus for a few years, we can start building local capacity such that they're able to kind of manage and deliver the programming on their own. But in these early days, it's soup to nuts. We're running the entire program on their behalf.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible what I had the benefit of hearing some of your founders pitch and seeing some decks, and just to see that level of polish put on talent that's pre-existing was heartening for me. Was there a moment or maybe an experience or statistic that made you go, I have to do this, or after you had started, I am absolutely in the right place?
Yeah, I think when we first got the reaction, when we first had those initial signups, and we thought, hey, maybe 20 students will sign up and participate. And then it was 100, then it was 200, then it was 300, and then it was hundreds. And we thought, oh, wow, this is, again, something that needs to happen, whether we're doing it or someone else. And it deserves its own organization, its own infrastructure to execute it. And that's when we reached out, and you start getting the validation from the customer, if you will, and then also other kind of philanthropic supporters. Franklin Templeton said yes, AT&T says yes, Verizon said. You just start hearing a lot of yeses, and that you're on the right path, and you're doing the right thing.
So how many students have been through, or entrepreneurs have been through the accelerator, and how many schools now?
So we're at over 700 students and alums across 75 HBCUs. And the one thing that I will say is that we were really intentional not to just provide this programming to the usual suspects within the HBCU ecosystem, the Howards, the Spelmans, the Morehouses of the world. And so it was, again, heartening to see that we launched it during COVID, so it had to be virtual, but that we were able to support rural schools, HBCUs that don't get a lot of funding and attention, and provide that same level of support that we would at Morehouse. So that breadth of offerings is something that we're very excited about, and our hope is that we can continue not only to provide that breadth, but now go down deep at more of these schools where we actually have boots on the ground, and we're able to do more, really become a part of the fabric of the school. So that's still on the whiteboard for the future, but we're working towards that.
Yeah, it's almost like it strikes me as almost synthetic, might be the wrong word, but it's intentionally building some of these networks that
already exist at some of the institutions you talked about, where there might be 10 accelerators. And there's also friends and family with experience in these areas. There's capital, and there's this whole support system that just hasn't been there for Black entrepreneurs, right? And maybe Black professionals have started to make some gains in certain areas. And so I think it's brilliant. I think it's really impactful. What's the aspirational kind of impact that you would see if everything goes well at all these institutions and with all these students?
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of that. So, because we launched 7 dedicated accelerators this past fall. We had a process where we selected some HBCUs where now we are starting to build some of that local capacity. So they each have a campus lead. They're hosting events on campus. We're putting the students through the program as a cohort. That's going to build an alumni network, and then hopefully they're then giving back to their, so students who are coming after them. So that, just as you described, like ultimately we want to build a mini innovation ecosystem on each of these campuses where they are having access to both kind of the advisory support and financial support to help get some of these opportunities off the ground. And the reality is that these are all current, in most cases, current students, and what their idea is now may not be ultimately what they end up working on in the future. They may not even be an entrepreneur, in the future. They go work for Uplifting Capital. They go somewhere else. But
Come on.
But we want to build that entrepreneurial, mindset around just whether you applying it to a new business or you're going to be an entrepreneur somewhere else. Like these skills around, listening to your customer and understanding how your solution is solving a real problem. Like all of those kind of skills are going to be applicable regardless of what they do. And then hopefully, at some point down the road, if they do get kind of that entrepreneurship bug again, they have that foundation and they're ready to, really make a move along that path.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience, like deeply and experientially understanding business value creation serves one in so many different avenues and so many different places in society, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. I think it's such a huge service. And so, but one of the things that you mentioned, I don't want to miss this opportunity to follow up, was that you're not only providing advisory support and building this lovely ecosystem of advice and networks, but capital. So talk about where that came in the progression and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so through the nonprofit, we were providing non-dilutive, grants, really small, essentially stipends to help the students continue to work on their businesses. Is that something that they were interested in? We recognized that wasn't going to be enough to move the needle in most cases, and so we said, let's launch this fund that is more, kind of a traditional, 2 and 20 fund, LP, GP structure to really, I think in some cases, and I had to kind of like look at myself in the mirror and say, am I the right person to be, doing this work? To your point earlier, I'm not an HBCU, grad. But after, kind of considering it, really what we're trying to state in many cases is that a Silicon Valley based firm sees a lot of value in what's happening at HBCUs. Like that statement that we're hoping to make will ideally attract other investors who weren't necessarily thinking about talent coming out of North Carolina A&T in the same as we're thinking about talent coming out of MIT. And so by us being a quote unquote outsider, if you will, even though we've been on the ground working at these institutions, we feel like we can send a pretty powerful message that the companies coming out of our fund are doing great, highly successful, and you too, Mr. and Miss Investors, should take a look.
Yeah, no, one of the things that at Uplifting Capital we have been touting is this concept of inclusion alpha, right? If there's equal talent, or if we start with that assumption, and there's an imbalance of resources and an imbalance of opportunity, providing those resources and providing that opportunity from an investment standpoint should have some alpha associated with it, and it should be, and especially when you may be uniquely suited or have unique experience in kind of sourcing that talent, connecting with that talent. The number of signups you got on day one is indicative of the fact that you have something that resonates. And so I think of it, yeah, absolutely. There is the moral imperative, and there's an impact benefit, but there's also a financial benefit to going where other folks aren't, right?
Yeah, no, and I mean, the deals that we're seeing now have been, ones that we're like really excited about the potential. And again, this is really early, we're at the stage that we're coming in, but as I stack them up against what we've seen kind of writ large, which again, going back to kind of our initial thesis within Nex Cubed, we never were explicitly saying we're only going to invest in female founders or entrepreneurs of color. We were just trying to create an environment where those founders felt comfortable and would seek out our support and accelerator as a result. So the numbers just happen to fall into that category where 60% of our portfolio is either female or entrepreneurs of color. But when I look at the deals that we're seeing now, I would stack those up against whether it was only an HBCU specific fund, or we were looking at all opportunities. All these companies would have been just as competitive. So we're really thrilled at what we're seeing, kind of early for our first cohort, and just know that it's not going to take long for other people to recognize, wait a second, we should also be looking at around the corner at these schools. But for now that we're kind of one of the first movers in the space, from a business perspective, we like how things are shaping up.
Yeah, you're hopeful that everyone recognizes this, not today, right, man, tomorrow. I hope everyone sees this opportunity.
Just a little runway. Let us get up and going. But I'll even say that even the companies that are past our stage, and this is what I think is so powerful about the HBCU community, which for anybody who's graduated from a school, they have an affiliation usually or affinity back to that school. So if they see another student who's graduated from there, they want to give them a little extra support. That grows the same within HBCU, and there are 100 plus HBCUs out there, but it's like cross-pollination across all of those institutions. So when we go to a founder and we say, hey, we're starting this fund, it's focused exclusively on HBCUs, even if they're like further along in the stack, like they're at the seed or Series A level, they're like, well, how can I still be helpful? Can I refer you to other founders? Can I be a mentor to your portfolio? Or are you going to do some follow-on funding? Maybe you can come into this next round. I mean, the door has just been open on so many levels that it really proved out what we thought initially, that it's going to be more than just us providing capital. The founders are going to want to be a part of this community because they see it as a way to give back to the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that speaks to both what you're doing, and that also speaks to the fact that it's obvious that you actually have a heart for this work, and that you are leading with in addition to the financial opportunity, leading with the benefits that you want to have for this broader community. And I know the first time we met in person, we had an impact dinner, and we had met, I think, a few weeks before that. And I said, Marlon, we're doing this thing on criminal justice, and you were there at the next one. And so I can vouch for the fact that you had no reason to be there, and your heart for impact is clear and true. And so I wish you nothing but the best in what you're doing. How can folks, whether it's a financial advisor, high net worth individual, or foundation, how can folks support the work that you're doing specifically at the HBCU Founders Initiative and Fund, and then also this broader mission to support this ecosystem?
Yeah, well, obviously from a philanthropic perspective, we have our 501c3, and so our ability to support more HBCUs is contingent upon funding. So we've received some really generous support from foundations and like United Negro College Fund and corporations like Franklin Templeton and Costco, among others. And so that's always a great way. What we always tell folks who are engaged with us, like, it's not going to be one of these deals where you can just write a check and come back to us in 6 months and say, hey, how's it going? And, you ask for a report. Like, in order for this to work, we really need engagement, because we assign advisors to all of the teams that are going through the program. We have mentor opportunities. We need judges for pitch competitions. It's the scale at which we're trying to kind of grow this program is going to require not just Nex Cubed, but not just the Founders Initiative, but we're going to need a lot of hands, on deck to support that. So getting engaged as a mentor, getting engaged as an advisor. We have an investment advisory board, which provides kind of friendly feedback to, you're on that board, so can provide friendly feedback to the teams as they're going through the program. But yeah, we're just looking for folks that have a heart for the work and want to roll up their sleeves and get involved.
Well, that is fantastic, and I hope everyone listening jumps in, and we'll make sure that people have the resources to connect with you. I'll close with the question that we like to ask many of our guests, which is, what does uplifting mean to you?
Wow. What does uplifting mean to me? I think it's just being thankful, being thankful for all the blessings that you've been given. That's kind of the starting point by which you're kind of interacting with others. Because if you're starting with that uplift or that thankful heart, then it doesn't really feel like work when you're out there trying to support others and help them achieve their goals. It just feels more like a byproduct of kind of who you are and what you're all about. So for me, uplifting is about helping other people realize their potential. I've been blessed to have folks in my life who have seen more in me than I saw in myself, and I want to be able to provide that same type of support to others who, if I could play that role for somebody, that would make me a happy camper.
Well, your spirit oozes that, your work and your resume oozes that, and so yeah, no, I'm thankful for you joining and sharing what you're doing, and excited to continue to support however I can.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Marlon.
Please be sure to subscribe, like, and click the notification button so you never miss an episode.